Our company has no more than 20 offices around the world, and we are right now with 750 people working at Unity, and we are hiring another 150 people. Our community grow very fast. We have more than 4.5 million people using Unity. Tons of games are made with Unity. Check out our showcase on our website if you want to learn more about that. There's a lot of critical acclaimed, beautiful games out there. And if you've never played Monument Valley and Ori and the Blind Forest, those are games made with Unity. But also very outstanding games. All automatically. Okay. I don't click anything. Okay. But as Unity is used in a lot of different spaces. Okay. One thing I want to point out is that we have 4.5 million developers using Unity, 750 million installs of Unity on mobile games per month, and we serve more than 1 billion unique devices installed Unity mobile games on it in 2015 alone. So that's an staggering number of our community, thanks to you. But I will talk a bit about creating a playable VR environment in Unity for Samsung Gear VR and Oculus. This is a talk about, so on the end you will better understand those things. My name is Caellewaert. I work as the global leader for Evangelism at Unity Technologies. Quickly a little bit about me myself here. A long time ago I did made AR games and VR games, but for people who are afraid of spiders. It sounds funny. I didn't believe in it first. I worked together with a psychologist, and I thought, how can he be afraid of a virtual spider? But then we did the tests. Some candidates, their heart rate goes up above 200 beats a minute. It's the same experience they have. So that was for me the first eye-opening. Wow, VR can be real. Okay. Now at Unity we have a few important partners that I always want to point out that work with us directly on the integration, on the optimization, on the back end with Unity, such as Oculus, Gear VR, and Morpheus. Those are the devices that are really optimized for our platform. There's a whole ecosystem from Google Cardboard, a lot of other VR and AR companies who contribute to the Unity platform. But after this presentation, you will better understand how you can set up for Unity 5. You're interested in Unity 5 and you want to get going on Gear VR or Oculus. We're going to give an overview of how it works in 4.6. If you have a 4 version and you don't want to upgrade it to 5, but how we can, if you want to use 5, we see how much easier it is. I'm going to give also some technical advice and also then design advice. That's my big passion out there. But before I continue, who has already made a game with Unity? Okay. And who has already made a VR game with Unity? Okay. And who makes mobile games? And who works for a large studio? Okay. And who works for indie? As indie? Okay. And who's a student? Nobody? Sorry. I ask all those questions to better understand my audience what I have to tell. Okay. Okay. That's a good one. So, first of all, setting up VR and the integration into Unity. Okay. So the things that, if you want to do it for Oculus, you have to install quite a bit of software. You have to install the Oculus SDK. You go to the website of Oculus, you download the SDK, you download the Oculus runtime, and you download Unity 4.5, and then you can start to work with it. Okay. In the Oculus works starting in 4.6 in the free version. Okay. Then we release the free version fully for that. With the Gear VR, there's quite a bit of installations you have to do the first time. You install the Oculus Mobile SDK, the Oculus Runtime, the Java kit, the Android, the USB drivers, and again you have to have Unity 4.5 or 4.6 in the free version. So a few things I want to point out that both are quite different, and we're going to talk about that. It comes also from a design viewpoint, but also from a cost viewpoint. If you want to have an Oculus Gear VR, it will be about $1,000. You're going to think about an Oculus at $350. So there starts already differences, and especially when they work in a team and you have to buy as an indie guy 5 or 10 devices, then it becomes costly. Now the cool thing is that with Unity, we made it all drag and drop. So for you that you drag and drop, I'm gonna show it a little bit later on. You drag and drop really it and be amazed. It's super simple. You have to install an Unity asset package. So where do you get that package? When you go to the Oculus website and you download the SDK, there you're gonna find in the SDK the standard asset package. The standard asset package, if you're not familiar with that, that's a package you can import in Unity and it makes a prefabs for you for a first person and a third person. You just drag and drop, you don't have to do any program, not set it up. So remember that the SDK comes with examples, there's a room, check out those rooms, and then you can drag and drop things from there out. So the OVR player controller used to come with the Samsung Gear VR, but now it's a separate product you have to buy. I realized when I went to buy it, I came home and I opened the box and said, where's my controller? And then I had to go back to the store, separately you have to buy now. Oh, nobody told me that one. Okay. So if you do, so it's easy, it connects with Bluetooth, things like that. But when you play it in Unity, you will see automatically in 4.6 two cameras. It's the left eye and the right eye. Okay, it's a bit annoying to see that, because you don't see good your gameplay then when you work on it. So the camera controller is just a drag and drop prefab we have, especially for a non-verse. If you want to just have the camera standing there and you look around with it, and then automatically you don't have to make the connection with the rotation sensors. When you rotate on the device, the camera rotates with it. So one thing I want to point out is here, watch for movement and speed. You can of course connect that camera to a trail or moving forward. But when you do that, my advice is that you have the player has full control on the speed. So some people will not handle emotionally or physically handle this very fast movements, and they could get easily dizzy. So make sure you can fully control that. We're going to talk more about in the design part. Now, if you have Unity 5, and especially 5.1, who's on 5.1? Okay, awesome. Have you tried already the one button click? Okay, so one person used it. So it's really great. It's one button you have to click and it works out of the box. And let me show you that, where it is. So in Unity here, you make a game and you want to change it to, for the VR project. You go to build settings, player settings, and here is the button. Click here, and then you can say here, virtual reality supported. That's the only thing you have to click. So your old prefabs that you use, or the standard prefabs you use as a first person, like if I go here, and I'm gonna go to here, assets, import a package, and I use my character, you import this. This is the default character you normally use, or third person or first person here. We go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's almost imported. Okay. So when you import that, and you go to your standard assets, your character, I'm going to say a first person in this time, and I do a prefab first person controller. When you drag and drop that controller in there, and we're going to bring it up a little bit, this first person will automatically render two cameras, and then it's connected to the Gear VR or the Oculus. You don't have to do anything. If you also just create a regular camera, here a camera, this camera will automatically be also connected. You don't have to put any script in it of rotations. So when you rotate it, the camera rotates automatically. Nothing to be done. Super simple. But there's also somewhat optimization in the back end going on, and that's what we're going to quickly talk about too. Okay. So you just click it and it's done. In the back end, so there's, when you press play, you're not going to see anymore two cameras. You see the full game. It's called, you can change with an API. It's here, mirror API somewhere, so that you can say mirror or not mirror. So when you have your Oculus or your Gear VR connected to it, you will see the stereoscopic there, but not on your screen anymore. Why is that? Because you have much better to see your game. Okay, so that's one thing we changed. There's also a class for your eye positioning to measure that and bring that information in there too. So the better your eyes are matched with the device, the distance, the better it will be too for your experience, because otherwise your brain's going overdrive. There's something wrong here. Okay. But on the back end, what we've done, and I think we did some optimization. One of the things is the shadows are only rendered now one time instead of two times rendered for left eye and right eye, and then they basically copy paste to the other eye. And also the culling. If you use custom culling or occlusion culling, it will be rendered only one time and basically paste to the other eye. So that's a huge optimization. If you think about draw calls, if you do real-time shadows and you had 100 when you do 2 times, it becomes 200. It goes back to 100 thanks to the optimization in the back. This is super powerful. So on technical advice, make sure when you build to the Gear VR, especially, that you use all those settings. I'm not going to read them all, but if you don't do that, sometimes it will not build, or your optimization is not set to that. Especially anti-aliasing is very important. Your VSync is very important because you don't want to get distorted screens in there, and that will make it you're going to be very, very sick. I'm going to talk more about that, the impact it has on the design viewport. Okay. Well, one thing I always really advise is get your profiler. I can quickly show you that. When you come from the free version, sometimes you did not know there's a profiler. And remember, in Unity 5, all the features from Unity, all the pro features are in the free version too. And here, window profiler. Okay. When you play a game, you see exactly what's going on in the CPU, in your rendering, and in memory. And then you can analyze from there what you have to optimize for your game to make it play good. I'll go back here to my PowerPoint. Okay. So keep your polygons low as possible, because especially when you do Gear VR, in that case it is a mobile device. It's not a PC. Keep it low, and also there's a big differences here. Reduce your draw calls, but look at the set pass call, and this is something that became new in Unity 5. And let me show you what I mean with that. When you press play a game here, okay, let's play, and look at the stats here. We are used to looking, if you came from Unity 4 especially, you use your batches. That was your draw calls, but it's not what's so important is what you have to look at is your set pass call. Because your set pass call is actually what being calculated every frame. And your batches are not calculated any frame anymore. It is what you have to look at the set pass call. That is the number that you want to heavily look at. So, I'm going to do this. Try to find my PowerPoint. Okay. So make sure you look at that. It's, especially for mobile, you're going to use higher textures to compensate for the low polygon. You have more memory on that there for that. Use pooling, very important. Reuse the same objects in the scene, especially because you work on mobile. Put if you can everything to static. It's very important. You have less RAM then, and bake as light as much as possible to textures. Real-time light creates a lot of, especially with shadows, creates a lot of draw calls. It is very important that you don't drop frames, and like that your gameplay is very good. Because if you have frames that drop, like you look around and you drop some frames, then you're going to be very sick. The player will be very sick. That's very important. And so use definitely toon shaders. If you cannot put the beta realism, that's more important. Okay. Use LED culling and batching. The default things you use for optimization, use them. A nice example of toon shading here is the job simulator from Alchemy. If you're not playing it, play the game. It's pretty awesome. You simulate to have actually a job. But you see, it's a really toon shading, but the experience is really great. The people have a lot of fun with it. So what is fun? And that's why we're going to talk a bit about the design advice. One of the elements is the input. Okay, and there's a lot of inputs. I'm not going to talk about it. You have your mouse keyboard, the touchpad. You have leap, all those different inputs. And that is a question that I think as a designer you really have to question, will I use that or not? Okay. For me it's always difficult to put on my Gear VR and then try to find my keyboard. It makes it difficult. Or if I put on my Gear VR and I have to use a touchpad, sometimes in the beginning it's hard to find. So we all dream of the perfect solutions where my hands automatically will be working, but it's not there yet. So we cannot design for that. So when we start with it, the first thing we look, which input device you will use. What we see is a lot of the gaze cursor. For the menu selection is really a lot there. Like you see the cursor and you look around, and then you look enough and you see it confirms. You look at that. That's why I think the neck is one of the most important devices that we have currently, because it can perfectly lock on a certain person. On a certain person, on a certain menu, on a certain button, or a certain input. Okay. Or you can use a Bluetooth patch, but I'm not a big fan of it because I have to try to find it then. Okay. Currently, what we see in the design that a lot of people make games between 5 and 20 minutes, because after that it starts to be hard on the brain sometimes, and especially when the eyes are not calibrated for the device. It's hard. And one thing that with working with Rob Pardo is the guy who created World of Warcraft, a tiny little indie game who has a few players. Okay. But one thing he really said, and that was really interesting, he says, when you make a game for VR, don't make the same mistake, or try to avoid the same mistake we did with mobile. In the beginning of mobile, what we saw is we take literally the games that existed on PC and we port them over to iOS or Android, and we used fake joysticks. It didn't work. Now we barely see the face joystick inputs at mobile device. And again, we're going to see that. We see taking the VR games over directly PC games or mobile games, and we bring them to VR, and the first thing we use is a keyboard. Okay. So try to find a design that really works for it. And one of the things that really came right away out of the box is with Gear VR, there's no cables attached to it. So the first thing you do is you look around. And when you start to look around and you see, when you take an existing game and you look around and there's nothing in the back, well, there's nothing to see. Okay. So that's a nice example like Temple Run. Temple Run was a game that was on iOS and Android, and you played in third person. You look from top and the character is running and you swipe left and right. I think they did a phenomenal job of porting that over to VR. Okay. You see it in the first person viewpoint and looking forward. Okay. Now you can look around and you can look to the back and you're going to see that ugly monster running after you. And if you've never played the game, it's time you start to play games. But what I found really interesting is also they put in front of you the shadow of the character that's behind you. So you still have the experience of the character running after you. Okay. And I think that's a very good porting, that bringing from a third person to first person on a device. Now, a few things that are very important is that in Unity, when you use the free version, you see the Unity logo, you're going to have to remove it and put a black screen there. Okay. Why is that? Because the screen is not in stereoscopic, so you will be not accepted to submit it to sell it with Samsung. So that's something you have to remind yourself too. Now, one thing is also when you create buttons, put the buttons about 2 to 3 meters away in the game. In Unity, it's very simple. You have 1 unit is 1 meter. It's about 1 yard. Put them that way, because if you put them further away, they start to be difficult to interact with. They become smaller. But also make sure that the buttons fit in the viewport. Okay. If the button is too long and you have to look from left to right, back and forward to read it, that becomes very annoying. And if you put it very close, what's going on here? Okay. Now, a very important element is you pause the game. When you pause the game, don't pause the camera. When you press pause and the camera is locked and you look around still, the experience will be very bad and you're going to see people faint easily. Now that's a long text, and I actually copy-paste that from the manual from Oculus, and I found it very interesting. And we worked actually those days I was working on a game with a large AAA studio, and we changed it actually there. When you change from a level, what we sometimes see is, like one of the games we played actually was, you were standing still, and when you won the level, you went in a truck driving around. Well, don't do it in one shot, because you're telling your body you're standing still, and then in a fraction of a second, you tell your body you're moving. Or you go to another side of the scene. Change it to by fading. That will have the body will be able to accept that, okay, we are moving, there's a transition going on here. Okay. So if you design interfaces, for your UI, for instance, like you want to bring in the amount of bullets you have in a game. Instead of showing that as a UI element, why don't you show it directly on the weapon, a countdown, so it's really in the game itself. And we're going to see some examples of that. And if you want to, our human eye, after 3-5 meters, our perspective starts to much faster change, fade out. And when I look here, this is very close. The range of 1 meter, 3 meters is perfect to see the 3D aspect. So try to keep it in that range, and that will be more to come out. Now, what we also learned is that throwing things in VR, cubes and spheres, yeah, it's 3D, but it doesn't make it perfect. If you look at the paintings of Vermeer's, You might have heard of him, the painter of light. When you look at those paintings, what's really interesting is you think they're really 3D, but they're pure flat. And why is that? Because of nice lighting, the composition. Okay. This is something you still have to use. Those skills are not out of the door. Use your artist. There's a reason why they have artists. And if you look at the game, a Roman 360, that's a nice integration done here. Here the amounts of ammo you have, or the amounts of life you have, is all done by 3D objects in the scene. It's not like just a button on top of that. Because if you would look around, that button follows. That's why we give you the advice. Put those things, those elements as an object in the scene. Like in real life. Also, here the countdown of the game and things like that, why don't you attach it into the game as a real object instead of having a timer somewhere just on the corner top. So that's changing your design process to the VR. And Unity, that's really a beautiful aspect. If you created buttons and this for a game, maybe for a PC, when you want to change it to VR, it's really simple. There's an option to change the button settings from screen space to world space, and they automatically become a game object in your scene. Super simple to do the adjustment. Okay. One of the other things is that when you have bright images, okay, this is the flickering. Watch out for that. Not everybody likes that. On medical reasons, you have to watch out for that. You can have epilepsy, so make it less as comfortable. Now, a crosshair. A lot of people use a crosshair, and you look around and you move it. But why don't you adjust it with the depth? If you look to a close object, you see it bigger. When you look far away, your crosshair becomes smaller, and that gives you right away that the element is part of the scene and not an overlay. And that's what I liked also in the game of Roman 360, is the crosshair. When you move it, you see a little trail. So it becomes a little bit more part even of the environment. Okay. Now, unaccelerated motions. I've played this few racing games, but you're standing still in a chair, and the racing game goes over on a rough terrain. Well, you're telling your body that you're actually moving up and down, but you're not. So things like that, what you have to watch out. Or like in a game I played, you run on a platform and automatically it brings you up, but there's no warning of it. There's no storytelling why it makes sense to do that. Those things create a very discomforting. Okay. I think a lot of people have played Titans of Space. That's not really a game, but you explore the world, you explore the universe. Who has played this one? Okay, it's pretty awesome because my daughter of 8 years old did a tour, and she was telling to everybody in school she went to space. Not really, honey, but no, Dad, I went to space. Okay. But when you play it, you look around and you fly around, and you can look in the back and the front. But what they really did, they put there a 3D body, just to make sure you don't get too sick with all the rotation up and down, because that's your body's sitting still and you're telling to move. So you create a comfort zone there. Okay. So as I said, the players look in any directions, and especially with the Samsung Gear VR, there's no cables, and I look in the back to my game. And Temperament did that very good, because although you're playing a first-person game running forward, when you look around in the back, you see the character running after you. Okay, so it's really nice filling the space like in reality. Okay. One thing we also saw in a few cases where they wanted to be artistic, the creator, and they create the scale in the left eye a little bit different than the right eye. Don't do that. You're going to see some sick people. One of the things that the full scene versus empty. This in Unity looks pretty full, the scene, when you see it. But when you see it in VR, it doesn't look full. Okay. So one thing, look to the real world. Try as much as possible. Look at the real world to fill the space, to make it livable, to see it as real. Okay. And so one of the last things is also, it's not always in the first person you have to play as a game. Third person games work really well. And a nice example was off-road, where you have to drive around and you have to watch out for raptors coming after you or catching them. So you drive around, but the camera follows the car. So it's not always first person and third person. And on the internet we start to see very nice examples where you have third person inputs, where you turn left and the character starts walk left, turn right. There's some very nice one I saw. Okay, so that was a quick overview but there's one more surprise. Okay, on a quick overview on the design reviews, technical advice, and existing games that are out there who are leading the VR market. Okay, but here's the most interesting part is that you see here a nice link. If you go to that link, you fill in the credit card number, you fill in your information, and the one lucky winner will automatically be picked for a license, for Unity License Pro. And then on Monday, you will get an email with the shiny license in your mailbox. So if you fill it in, it's really great. You can always contact me here, and I'm going to open for questions. But one thing I also want to point out is I'm going to quickly change from slide and then go back, is we have Unite Boston coming up. Who's coming to Unite Boston? Okay, 1, 2, we should see all hands. Unite Boston is our annual conference at Unite that we have all over the world. But one of the cool things is that it's 3 days where our community and our devs explain a lot more, and then that's 3 days long. You can actually take your laptop with your projects and sit down with our devs, and they will help you to fix certain bugs or problems you have, or go over questions you have. There's also a full training day, the day before. We have a full day that will take you how to make a multiplayer tank game. And there will be a lot of talks on VR. There's, I think, 5 talks on VR listed on our schedule. We're going to do some cool things on the stage. So, but thank you, and I will be staying here around for questions. Thank you.